14.
Deck like Mardu Green, not typically Tom Ross's style.
Well, he has been branching out in this recent standard, has not found many things in his play range. So he was a Megamorph player for a while when that was a thing, tried Jeskai Black for the Players' Championship, now has gone more toward a Mardu style of play. Both players here on the Sylvan Advocate build, that's become the new standard for Mardu Green. We don't see too many Soulfire Grandmasters anymore. Some cosmetic differences in their decks, but this is going to be mostly a true mirror. See Byrd starting out on Needle Spires. Tom playing the Hissing Quagmire instead of Needle Spires in his deck. Not in play just yet, though.
I think I prefer Needle Spires myself, though the Quagmire, it activates for fewer mana, which is a relevant concern. And it always trades with anything.
The gold standard for creature lands is still the Shambling Vent. Needle Spires is better at attacking planeswalkers and players' life totals. Vent's better in combat with creatures.
Right.
Turn 2 will be Sylvan Advocate from Tom Ross. He's on the play, so he's the first creature onto the board. That 3 toughness makes it difficult to shoot down. Mark, just a fetch land and a pass. He had Transgress the Mind, but between Needle Spires and Windswept Heath, he actually does not have a black mana source.
And from the looks of things here, doesn't even have another land.
So he's got 3 Sylvan Advocates, Chandra, Kolaghan's Command, Abzan Charm, Transgress. He actually could have played an Advocate last turn, and I'm a little surprised to see him not make the play.
Yeah, could have found a basic forest, cast Advocate on turn 2, has the ability to just run Advocates for the next 2 turns, though he would be off of black mana, and the rest of his hand outside of that Chandra Flamecaller would require a black source.
Yeah, well, he already is out of black mana, even if he fetches on end step here.
Yeah, that's true. The Windswept Heath itself cannot find a black source. Green-black, black-white, both enemy color pairs.
So by waiting a turn on your Advocates, you can get second red, you can get second white. If he had a Dark Dwellers in hand, I guess he does have a Chandra, that he needs double red for that. The Duress will select Transgress.
Yeah, it is curious. I think that I would just go for the Advocate. Especially, you have Toms, you get in place to block it, so you don't fall too far behind on that damage race.
Right. There is a worry here that Tom does something like second Advocate and then just starts playing kill spells. And we'll see if he can do that. Second Advocate for Tom.
A concern in the deck with basic Forest is that it can't cast Crackling Doom.
You're right. It cannot cast Crackling Doom.
But that's just not in the hand just yet.
Yeah, he can't top deck Crackling Doom and third land, so that concern is a ways off.
Yeah, I imagine that just the Dooms in the deck are some of the motivation here.
That does make sense. This means if he draws a Swamp, he can Crackling Doom. It also, well, not particularly makes any of the other spells more castable. Draws a third land here. It looks like it's another copy of Needle Spires.
Well, probably just wanted to cast a 2-drop on this turn anyway, so that pickup is fine, though a black source would be much preferred.
Yeah, plays an Advocate, plays Needle Spires, passes back. Tom still with perfect information on the hand. So we go back over to Tom Ross. He's got kill spells at the ready. You see Roast and Siege Rhino. See which one he goes for. It looks like he'll attack, deal 2, and play Rhino.
I like this a lot. There's no express need to use a removal spell on the Advocate. You know both another one that's on this way, and you're also much more likely to end up with 6 lands before your opponent.
Well, because he knows Mark's hand, he knows that Mark, even if he draws a black mana, does not have a kill spell for Siege Rhino. Mark's hand, well, I guess he could Abzan Charm it. But the rest of the hand, Kolaghan's Command is not particularly good here.
Right.
More Advocates, I think Tom could ignore that.
And more bad news for Mark. He picked up a basic Mountain, so he has 4 mana, but can still only cast 1 Advocate.
Yeah, he doesn't even have the second green, you're right. So his play will be Mountain and Sylvan Advocate. It's the only line available to him. And now we go over to Tom Ross. This is bad news here. He roasts an Advocate. That's his second spell in the graveyard, so he'll Fiery Impulse an Advocate. Here's a swing for 8. Mark will go to 4. And I don't believe he has a top deck that saves him here.
Right. Tom had the option to just cast Painful Truce and leave up Fiery Impulse and kind of win combat that way, though this line just leaves Mark dead.
Yeah, I think this line is just a straight win. Can't think of a card that Mark can draw here to save him.
Right.
Read the Bones are certainly not it, and we'll be on to game 2.
Right, uncastable and not desirable to cast.
Some mana problems for the Mardu green deck from Mark Anthony Byrd will cost him game 1. Now, this is actually an interesting spot. Originally, Mardu green played Nomad Outposts instead of the Needle Spires, and this changed over when Mardu green started playing Sylvan Advocate instead of Soulfire Grandmaster. To note here, Mark did end that game with 2 Needle Spires in play, so with a more classical mana base, he would have had access to all his cards.
Right, it's a thematic upgrade. You're able to apply more pressure by drawing fewer spells, though in certain situations it does cost you. It is not free to change a tri-land to a creature land.
Yeah, well, it's mostly free, because this deck has, as when you look at the numbers on the deck of how many of each mana source you need, black is not, you know, you're not running scarce on black mana. Normally you have more than enough of it. Red mana is frequently a choke point, and green mana, those are the ones that you most frequently are missing. Black's usually a gimme. So I understand switching on Needle Spires. I've done so in my list as well, but the situation where it could have helped.
Right, there's 16 black sources in his build, it looks
Exactly.
like. You know, and that's higher than the minimum to reasonably expect it. You know, we're not optimizing to find black, but we're also playing a 4-color deck. You know, how nuts do you want to go?
All right, so we're going to look over at their sideboards. We'll start with Mark Anthony Byrd. He has Hallowed Moonlight, Anafenza, Radiant Flames. I'll let you go through the list. Generally in this matchup, you get bigger, and you just try to get more 2-for-1s.
Yeah, so there's Duress, Kalidas, Transgress, Dragon Lord, Atarka, Ob Nixilis Reunited, Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker, Painful Truce, Infinite Obliteration. So my understanding of this matchup, this is going to be very similar to Abzan Control Mirrors of ages past. You know, the deck is a little more aggressive than those decks, but really just want to go bigger than the opponent. So Transgress the Mind to stop them from doing the same. Dragon Lord Atarka to go over the top. Ob Nixilis to add a Planeswalker to the team. Possibly Sarkhan for the same reason. It can tag a Sylvan Advocate if you get it before they have 6 lands, and also you fly over the competition. And Painful Truce to gas back up.
It is pretty interesting, a card like Sarkhan in the matchup. He is a Planeswalker, which is typically very good. And if the deal 4 damage to a creature is a slam dunk to remove a card, I like it. Now, at the same time, this is in most hands where you have Sarkhan and you have Goblin Dark Dwellers, I will expect that Dark Dwellers is the stronger play more often than not. So it's touchy as to see whether or not you'd want this. What about Tom's side?
So on Tom's side, we have Palace Siege, which is a pretty interesting one. We haven't seen this card a ton. We've seen it in a couple sideboards this weekend. 5 mana enchantment that's able to either generate value or pressure the opponent's life total. This matchup could swing either way. Both of these modes potentially relevant. One of them almost certainly going to be, so I like this card quite a lot. Tassiger, another 4/5, and a value-generating creature. Roast to deal with opposing creatures. Those seem to be the highlights.
Yeah, I do like what Tom Ross's sideboard approach is. Palace Siege is very interesting. We've seen Joshua Cho with 2 of them in his sideboard. Now, historically, Outpost Siege has been the siege you want in the mirror. We've seen 1 to 2 of those in the boards of Mardu Green. But a switch to Palace Siege is quite interesting, and I'm excited to see it play out if Tom's boarding it in.
Yeah, you have a lot of spells that nickel and dime your opponent, like Crackling Doom, so sometimes just draining them for 2 every turn kills them, certainly at a faster rate than a random card would on average, and also sometimes just, you know, raise dead on a creature every turn does a lot more than a random card.
All right, so they're getting ready for Game 2. We're going to take a second and tell you about Star City Games Game Night. This has been the promotion that we started last year. So Game Night, it's always Game Night somewhere, and you can find that at a store near you. We have our locator at starcitygames.com/Game Night. Now, what does Game Night mean if you haven't attended one? Well, it means you get a chance to win exclusive pins and tokens each week just for playing in your local store's events. So that'll change each month. In March, we're finishing up. You see this is the same as the pin we're wearing. This is the Grim Llama-mancer. By the way, these tokens are all as awesome as that. If you go to next month, April, we're giving away the Slobber and Mile Driver. See, we have lots of great red cards you can get. You can get llamas and dogs. See, there's a creature theme to this, an animal theme. And and the next month, if you need some tokens made for your Legacy deck, how about the Manatiri Mentor? We'll be giving him away in May. If your store gets signed up now, you can sign up in time to get this promo. So ask your store to put this one on. It's a great event. We have more, starcitygames.com/Game Night.
Manatiri Mentor is definitely my favorite of that lot.
Yeah, I like it because if you say it just right, it's not even a pun. You're just kind of saying it, you know, you're just saying it sloppy. Like, yeah, it's my Manatiri Mentor. Both players starting on a tap land. For Tom Ross, it's going to be Despise. That one's coming out of the board. We'll get a look at Mark's hand. Goblin Dark Dwellers, Den Protector, Infinite Obliteration, Roast, Advocate, and 2 lands.
So the Obliteration is an interesting angle. I also like that you can flash it back with Dark Dwellers. So the idea is that the most impactful card in the mirror is going to be Goblin Dark Dwellers because it's a 4/4 stapled to one of the spells that you want to be casting.
So I agree that Goblin Dark Dwellers is a great card here. Now, I want to caution a bit because I frequently see players board in cards like Surgical Extraction style effects far too much. And I think this is a case of that. So I understand that Dark Dwellers is great, and I would love to take them out of my opponent's deck. But in a matchup like this, where each player gets 1 spell per turn, and we're just curving each other out, I don't think you can take turn 3 playing a card that doesn't do anything.
It's a far cry from my style to take that approach against a fair deck.
Right.
But it's a line that I think you'll see a number of players take.
So let's say you were playing against 5-color Bring to Light, where their deck was just Bring to Light, Siege Rhinos, and Jaces. And you're like, I'm going to obliterate the Rhinos. Okay, I think now we're talking, because at that point they just don't have creatures. So, sure. But I mean, for all you know, like Tom might not even have Dark Dwellers in his hand. If he does, you're fine. But if you name a card that's not in Tom's hand with that Infinite Obliteration, that could lose you the game.
Yep. You want to be able to line it up where you can transgress them, see that something is there, and be able to hit it so you at least trade for a tangible resource.
And enough, I believe Mark Antony also choosing to go on the draw this game.
See, that's a decision that I think is somewhat reasonable in a mirror like this. A lot of the plays are going to be value plays. It makes Infinite Obliteration line up a little bit more awkward and things like that.
So this, okay, I guess I should back up here. This is not the approach I like for this mirror, but it is consistent. So what Mark's doing is if you say, I'm going to take the draw, I'm going to board an Infinite Obliterations, okay, Mark is really trying to be the control deck here. He says, I just want cards. I want you to discard cards. I want to draw more cards. You see he's obliterating Siege Rhinos.
Yeah, that would be the card that Tom had access to next turn. Unfortunately, he sees a Tassiger on the grip instead of a Rhino, so you're kind of missing on that. You know, this way, if Mark is able to get to 5 and cast a Dark Dwellers before Tom finds one, you can clean those ones out as well. I will say, though, that I have taken the draw in Jund mirrors on more than one occasion, and I've been relatively satisfied with that approach. The extra card can matter a lot in these really grindy matchups.
So I think it's reasonable. What you're worried about is being the first player to resolve a Dark Dwellers is no joke in this matchup. And that really does add up. It's because it's not just a card advantage game. The games end rather quickly. So when one player gets ahead, it's damage. You know, I got a Sylvan Advocate down. You played an Advocate. I crackling doomed you and hit you. You know, being on the draw, you might be up a card, but you will take a lot of points of damage. And I think that matters more than the extra card.
The risk is real. You know, you're behind on mana development and naturally board development as well. If you draw a lot of tap lands, that is only cemented further, though this is a strategy that I would absolutely be trying, at least in my playtest sessions.
Yeah, I want to see if it works.
I believe that attempting to take the draw in a matchup is an underutilized tool that is more valuable than a lot of players realize.
We have seen players, historically, Guillaume Wafo-Tapa, a player well known for control decks, taking the draw in Eternal formats even.
Right. Wafo-Tapa a little more liberal with the application than myself.
Than just about anyone, but his results speak for himself. And I think he is on to something. So Tom has to read the bones there, hit more land drops. He did find a Dark Dwellers for next turn. So maybe Mark wants to play the card advantage game, but Tom's pressing read the bones and Dark Dwelling it. That's going to be better card advantage. And not to mention, Mark is -1 card from the Infinite Obliteration.
Right. Mark also now -1 land because he bricked with that Obzon Charm.
And that was just really unfortunate for Mark. You know, Obzon Charming to draw 2 and missing the land drop here can really hurt. I mentioned before, the first player to resolve a Dark Dwellers, I would say, wins upwards of 80% of the games in this matchup.
Right.
That card just snowballs so hard.
And part of the motivation for taking the draw is you get an extra card to try to keep up on lands, which helps your board development. You know, he'd be one card higher in his deck if he was on the play. So, you know, he's kind of in a better position in that sense, though clearly stumbling is not good at play or draw.
It's easier to hit land 5 on turn 5 on the draw. You're not wrong. So for Tom, here's Goblin Dark Dwellers on turn 5. His only legal target here, well, he can get Despise or Read the Bones. Well, doesn't want to look at Mark's hand. He's just going to take more cards.
Yeah, just wants to get ahead on board, cement his advantage with Mark missing that land drop. The hand doesn't matter quite so much. There's a good chance there'll be a couple of draws where there's just going to be gas left over.
So I like something Tom did here, which is a bit of a strategic audible. Sylvan Advocate was in his top 2, and I think normally you wouldn't want Advocate in a lot of these positions. However, with the Rhinos out of his deck, Tom's got to think real hard about whether he wants to pass up on any sort of threat.
Right, just picking up an additional threat to try to make sure that you get something on the board. Also, Tom is 1 land away from that being a 4-5.
All right, so Mark Antony misses the land up again, so he's going to have an expensive turn to hit it. He'll Pulse of Marasa, back his Windswept Heath, go to 23, play the land, and pass.
It's not exactly where you want to be. The primary utility of Pulse is to return, say, Goblin Dark Dwellers, though picking up the land is added value.
Land draw for Tom. Tom can play Advocate and activate Shambling Vent this turn if he wants. He could swing 8.
Yeah, that's a good line to take. Mark's still on 23. If there's a line to progress the board more than that, you might see him take that, though that play is certainly quite good. I believe Tom still has Tassiger the Golden Fang in hand.
Ooh, does he have the mana to play and activate Tassiger? Tassiger needs, what, blue and green to activate, I believe.
Yeah, wouldn't necessarily be able to activate it, but he could do something like cast Advocate and Tassiger.
Wait, he has double green, I believe. He'll do Advocate. How about both, Advocate and Tassiger?
Right, yeah, I didn't necessarily like activating Tassiger this turn. There is a Cinderglade and a Canopy Vista, so that is possible, but just getting the extra body on the board.
Interesting choice here by Tom. He could have delved away his Despise in the graveyard and leave himself with just lands for Tassiger. He actually decides to keep the Despise in his graveyard, which is better for Dark Dwellers, and I suppose better for Tassiger if he actually wants Despise.
Right. And what I really like about playing these 2 creatures this turn is Tom now has 2 5 toughness creatures and a 4 toughness creature. It's going to be very hard for Mark to turn this around. He has a good buffer on life because of the Pulse of the Marasa, though time is dwindling quickly.
Yeah, Tom has 12 power on the board, 16 if you count Shambling Vent. Mark has stumbled on lands, and that may just hurt him too much, but his game plan of card advantage is succeeding here. If he can survive long enough to kill all these creatures. Say, if his hand was a pair of roasts right now, you know, roast the Advocate, roast the Tassiger, this could be a strategy that will win, a winning strategy for Mark. You know, but I think he needs to double kill spell this turn.
Right. Anything shy of that is not looking good enough. One thing, even about this stage of the game, with Tom on 6 lands and Mark on 4, the Sylvan Advocates in Tom's deck are just worth more than the ones in Mark's deck.
Yeah, we know Mark has at least 1 roast from that Despise early on. And here we go, we'll roast down the Advocate.
I like targeting the Advocate because it also takes away the power from the Shambling Vent.
Yeah, the Advocate is 6 power. He's going to transgress Tom. That's not ideal. So we see Dark Dwellers, Doom, Impulse, and Cut. That is a stacked hand.
Right.
I mean, you probably have to take the Dark Dwellers because you just can't win if you take other cards. But then you're trying to stabilize through Crackling Doom, Murderous Cut, Fiery Impulse. Good luck.
Yeah. So with the Despise in Graveyard, Tom can cast the Dark Dwellers as a 4/4 that also has a little bit of value. But the rest of the cards, how is Mark ever going to develop a board presence?
Yeah, it turns out Mark takes the Crackling Doom. You know, that makes sense too. If he, I suppose a Siege Rhino here could stabilize for Mark. Well, kind of stabilize. We'll get to that. But Crackling Doom maybe is a card he just can't win through. So Mark takes 8 on the swing, goes down to 10, and here's Tom putting more pressure on. It's another Dark Dwellers. And now we see Mark's holding. It is 2 Dark Dwellers, a Tarka, Den Protector, Sylvan Advocate, Chandra. Over 20 mana worth of cards and 4 lands in play.
Unfortunately, no Omniscience on that side of the table. Having 2 Dark Dwellers does ensure that if you draw a land, you're able to cast one, even with this Despise being pointed at you.
There is a roast in Mark's graveyard, so Dark Dwellers is good, but there's an issue here, and I think the issue is that both these Dark Dwellers in play for Tom have Menace, so it's not even that Mark can block them.
Right.
And I like this. Tom's going to take the Advocate.
Also only has a chump block on the Tasigur.
So the Advocate makes sense because he's just trying to make it so that Mark only can play one card per turn.
Right. Advocate is mana efficient, even if it's just a chump blocker.
Nothing else really is. Well, we'll see if he draw. Boy, is there a true sweeper? If he has a Languish, perhaps. I'll see if it's in his list.
Don't believe I saw one. Did find the lands. We can cast Dark Dwellers, so that has to be a well above average hit.
Well, I think he's dead on the board, though. So both, or it's very close. He's going to have to kill a Dark Dwellers, otherwise he's dead.
Tom's going to have a removal spell for the Dark Dwellers, and he also has that creature land in the Shambling Vent.
Yeah, so Tom will cut the Dark Dwellers, activate a creature land, and attack for 10. And that should do it.
Looks to be over.
Mark? Picking which one here. I don't know that he has a winner. Okay, Pulse of Marasa. Does that do it? That's maybe more life gain than roast. None of this is good.
So with Pulse of Marasa, you would go to 15 against Tom with the creature land activation, only attacking for 14?
So we're alive. We can alive for a turn. I don't know what we're doing from here, but we're alive.
It's something like life.
Go for the roast. Maybe Tom misses the. At this point, you're hoping that Tom misses some plays. Roast will take care of Dark Dwellers. So as it stands, Mark is dead on the board if Tom can see it.
We've remarked that a deck like Mardu, not necessarily Tom Ross's style, but what's more not Tom Ross's style is missing damage.
Here's a play. How about Murderous Cut on the creature? You see Tom set aside the mana to activate Shambling Vent. 10 damage, and that is the match. Tom Ross moves to 11-3. He is 1 win from a top 8 spot. For Mark Anthony Byrd, a great tournament, but the 4th loss will knock him out of contention for the championship.